We're going over IRS Form 8892, application for automatic extension of time to file Form 709 and/or payment of the gift/generation skipping transfer tax. That's a mouthful. So taxpayers usually don't have to worry about filing gift tax returns unless they make a taxable gift that's in excess of the IRS annual gift tax exclusion. So if you do have to file this form, which means that you gave a gift in 2023 that exceeded $17,000, in 2024 that amount will be $18,000. If you gave a gift to a single person in excess of that amount, you may have to file IRS Form 709. So that tax return is due by the April 15th tax filing deadline or the next business day. So for 2024, that would be for April 18th, I believe, is the next business day for the 2023 tax filing season. So if you can't file Form 709 by then you may need to file IRS Form 8892 to request an automatic extension. So under most circumstances, that automatic extension is 6 months unless the person that gave the gift died during the tax year, and we'll get into that momentarily. So there are three parts to this one-page tax form. In part one, it's the identification field. So you'll put in your taxpayer information. Part two, you'll actually select the automatic extension of time. We'll go over that, what that means. And then part three, if you need to, is the payment voucher. So it's the payment of your gift or your generation skipping transfer tax. So, and that actually can serve as a standalone form called IRS Form 8892V. That's your payment voucher. So most tax forms that end with a -V means that it's a payment voucher of some sort. So before you start completing this form, you should review the information at the top. The IRS gives you a nice little chart. So if you file a tax return extension for your individual income tax return, so that would be either IRS Form 4868, or if you're living overseas and you're seeking either the foreign income tax exclusion, the foreign housing deduction, or the foreign housing credit, then you may need to file IRS Form 2350 instead if your tax return extension specifically is for you to meet one of the presence tests as required. So if you file either of those tax extension forms and you don't expect to owe gift tax or generation skipping transfer tax, then you don't need to file this tax form at all. If you're already filing one of those two extension forms and you do expect to owe gift tax, then you would only file the payment voucher down below, your IRS Form 8892-V. So if you need an extension to file your Form 709, but you're not requesting an extension on your individual income tax return, then you would use this form in its entirety. And so we'll walk through the instructions and what they mean step by step. Let's go ahead and start with part one. You're going to enter your first name, your initial, so John Q. Doe, John Doe's social security number, and then your street address. You can use a post office box if the Postal Service doesn't deliver mail to your street address. So we included that information there. In the form instructions, there aren't any specific additional notes about this field. There is some additional information that we'll get to in just a moment. So in part two, you'll actually check the box if your applying for that 6-month extension to file Form 709, but you're not already applying for an extension on your individual tax return, you check this box. And if that's the only thing that happened, then that's all you need to do in this section. However, if the donor died and you're completing this on their behalf, then you may have an earlier due date. So, under normal circumstances, the tax filing deadline for your Form 709 would be April 15th or the next business day. If the donor has died during the tax year, then that Form 709 might be due before April 15th. And for more information as it pertains to your particular tax situation, you should refer to the Form 709 instructions to determine what that due date would be. So under federal law, specifically Section 6081 of the Internal Revenue Code, the IRS is only allowed to give you a 6-month extension from the initial due date. So if the donor died and as a result the original due date was January 15th, then the most or the longest extension that you could use to file would be up until July 15th of that year. So in this case, if the donor passed away during the tax year, you would have to enter the date of death, and that's the reference point for the IRS to be able to grant that 6-month extension. So under otherwise normal circumstances, that 6-month extension will take you from April 15th to October 15th or the following business day if that falls on a weekend or a holiday. So if you need to complete Part 3 and you've already completed Part 1, then we're going to focus on the items up here at the top. So we put in the tax year, which is for 2023. We entered an amount of the gift tax paid. That's between the gift tax paid and the item in box 3, that should equal the total amount of the check or money order that you include in your payment voucher. So in this case, John Doe is making an estimated tax payment of $5,000. He doesn't have any GST tax, generation skipping transfer tax. However, the only amount that you should enter into box 3 is any amount that was entered on your Form 709. And according to the form instructions, the only GST tax that you can pay using this voucher is the tax on a direct skip that you reported on Form 709. So don't add any other GST tax unless you've already reported it on Form 709. So if you did not complete the taxpayer information field up here, you will enter that information down here. If you've already completed it, you don't need to replicate the process. You would simply submit the entire form. If you have changed your street address since your most recent tax return, you can either call the IRS to inform them, or you can file IRS Form 8822, change of address, to notify the IRS of your change. Simply writing your new address down on this form, either the voucher or in Part 1, that's not going to update your record. So you need to actually formally request that the IRS change your address. You can do it by filing your tax return. You can do it online. You can do it by filing IRS Form 8822, or you can call the IRS. So if you need to send payment, there is an address. You would file this form. You would send it to the IRS office in Kansas City, Missouri. You can use FedEx or UPS or DHL, and they can give you a delivery confirmation to indicate that you actually submitted this in a timely manner. However, a pro tip for most people, you should submit that in enough time to be very clear that you made the deadline. However, sometimes mail gets lost, so if you use a private delivery service, such as UPS or FedEx, they'll at least give you a confirmation that it was delivered to the IRS office. So, one last note, the extension to file your tax return does not mean that there's an extension to pay any gift tax or any GST tax. So if you owe tax, you should pay it by the original due date. The extension is simply for the eventual tax return, the Form 709. Any outstanding tax that you don't pay by the original due date will start to accrue interest, and that interest will keep running until you pay the tax off in full. And that's even if you have reasonable cause, if you have any extenuating circumstances. Otherwise, you'll also be subject to penalties. So if you are late in filing anything, your 709 or your extension request, then the penalty for late filing is 5% of the outstanding tax balance per month for a maximum of 25%. So if you owed $1,000, then you would accrue $50 per month on top of that $1,000 until you reach the maximum of 25%, which would be $250. If you file in a timely manner, but you still have an outstanding tax, you still owe a penalty, but it's a failure to pay penalty, and that penalty is 0.5%. So again, on an outstanding $1,000 balance, instead of $50 accruing per month, it would be $5 accruing per month, up to a maximum of 25% or $250. So if you can't pay anything, you should at least file. That will reduce the amount of penalty that you owe, and that will make it a slightly better outcome than if you didn't file anything at all. So that's all we have for this tax form. We do cover this in a little bit more detail on our website in an article that we wrote just on IRS Form 8892. So if you go to teachmepersonalfinance.com, type in IRS Form 8892 in the search bar, you'll see our article. We'll also put a link to the article directly in the show notes for you. If you like our articles, please subscribe to our newsletter. And if you like our YouTube videos, please subscribe to our channel. And if you have any questions or comments, please post them in the comments section. Thank you very much and have a great day.